We spend far too much time worried about what makes us different than the next person or better than the next person, and not enough time thinking about why we should respect the next person. We all have a story, an overarching theme that runs through our lives and makes us who we are. The problem is, we think that since each of our stories is different, there's not a lot of perceived value and shared struggle. But we have far more in common than we can imagine, and what motivates one person can certainly help us as well. The Third Lab podcast is about understanding, respecting, and appreciating the struggle that it takes to overcome immeasurable odds in order to reach your destiny. Join me as I interview and bond with some of the most inspiring and incredible people, diving into their why to get a full understanding of their being. Without each other, we have nothing. So let's go on this adventure together and take on the future with open minds and open hearts. Welcome to the Third Lab podcast. What's going on, everybody? Thank you, as always, for joining me here on the Third Lab podcast. Really excited to connect with just another amazing guest, another person that I've been waiting to actually connect with. So I'm super excited about this one. I have the honor to talk to Diana Filo today, who's an educator, public speaker, and also a health and wellness coach. Filo, what's going on? How are you?
Hey Mel, I'm thrilled to be here and really excited that we are finally getting to talk about more than just recruitment and work stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me.
And as the educator that she is, that was a perfect segue into what's next. And so, how we know each other. I've had the fortune of working with Philo and learning a ton from her. Philo does the pathways and just really making sure that we have foundational ways for people to transition from teaching fellowships into full-time teaching roles, and then for our more experienced educators, ways to get into leadership and like take their leadership to the next level. And so Philo, as a previous principal and school leader, really brings just a dope perspective to this work. Super excited to get deeper into why she's so passionate about these things. But yeah, Philo, anything you want to add about how we know each other?
No, it's been an honor to be able to work with you over the past 2 years, and I'm really excited. I've listened to the pod. I'm very proud of you every time I listen. Your mom was one of my favorite guests, so shout out to your mom. And yeah, I'm excited to get the conversation going.
Awesome. Yeah, my mom was one of my favorite guests too, for sure. That was a great conversation because she likes to be so shielded and guarded, but I finally got her to drop that a little bit and just talk to us.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was a lot of fun. And so Philo, this is the Rep Your Hood section. So what hood you repping?
I am from Scotch Plains, New Jersey. um, for those of you, I mean, I rep Jersey pretty hard. I absolutely love where I'm from. I didn't learn how to pump my own gas until I was about 19. We could thank my college ex for that. And yeah, my whole family is from the central Jersey area. Still, I'm the weird one that bounced around the country for a little bit, and the pull of the East Coast brought me back.
Yeah, definitely shout outs to Jersey. I love Jersey. I'm from Philly, but spent about half my life living in North Jersey. So definitely shout outs to Jersey. Like we talked about before, I actually played ball with dudes from Scotch Plains. So small.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny. I might know some of your homies like little brothers and sisters too, which is dope. And so yeah, just talk to me, Philo. This is the opportunity that I have to sort of turn this podcast over to you. And so just talk to us about like your pathway and your journey and where you want us to begin.
Yeah, for sure. I will start in college. So I went to Penn State University. I have to also shout out Penn State. Go Nittany Lions. I absolutely loved my 4 years at State College. I always knew I was going to go to college. It was a focus and a goal, and just something I heard from both of my parents from the jump. My parents both went to a 2 year university. My mom eventually did get her 4 year degree. She graduated. She took one course a semester from, I think I remember watching her take coursework, definitely in my high school experience. And so watching her go back to school and knowing her ed philosophy, like she wanted to make sure my sister and I had an opportunity to go to a 4 year school. So I, that's one of the key moments, was just having college be a focus for me. I also want to thank my dad too, right? Like I remember opening up my Penn State acceptance letter, and I had also gotten a Rutgers. No shade to Rutgers, but like Penn State's Penn State, and I knew financially Rutgers was just going to be easier. But my dad, he was there when I opened up the letter and was just like, no, you're so let's get that letter back. Like, let's make sure Penn State knows you're going. And so those two moments I think are pretty key for me, just to really, it frames everything else that I think I've done. Like, my parents made sure I knew that school was important and was like access. And yeah, that's why I went to Penn State. And I was a psych major and a soc minor. I don't know what I thought I was going to do with both those degrees. What in the world was I going to be doing? I like learning about people. I like, talking and engaging with people. But I took a course called mental health in schools. And when I took that course, it really also then changed my direction. I worked in Baltimore. So I taught in Baltimore in second grade, off of, it was Waverly Elementary School, where the old stadium used to be, if you know Baltimore, and off of 33rd. And when I was working in second grade, I also went to Johns Hopkins. So I got my master's from Hopkins, and I just really got passionate about educating students, especially students who don't always get the opportunity for an excellent education because of where they were born and the color of their skin. So I really love the work that you and I do. And I think we have a similar passion there. So yeah, from there, I coached teachers across the country, both within Baltimore, but then across the country. I supported new teachers as they were getting ready to teach in their areas. So I've gotten to watch educators in New Orleans, Atlanta, Nashville, Memphis, like a lot of cool places. And so I also got a chance to work remotely around the country. So I lived in Brooklyn. We got to give Brooklyn a little bit, but a little bit of love. I lived in Brooklyn. I also lived in California for a bit when I was working remote with Teach for America, and eventually wanted to be back with kids. And while I loved coaching new teachers and adults, I really miss working with kids, which is what brought me back to KIPP and the East Coast. So Philly's that fine balance where it's like close enough to home, but not like right there. And so I taught first grade again, and kind of went from there. So first grade, assistant principal, and then I founded KIPP West Philadelphia Elementary School. And that building has bounced around a little bit, but we're now Parkside Ave. And my latest job, you beautifully framed, was I'm a senior director of teacher and leader pathways. So I think it's the perfect meld of using my school-based knowledge with my passion for watching adults become their best selves and creating pathways for people to do that. That's kind of like the timeline version of my story. And of course, there are twists and turns all throughout there, but that's the straight journey.
Yeah, and I appreciate you walking us through that. I'm gonna ask a ton of loaded questions here
Yeah, go
because
for
that's
it.
just what I do. And so, because you mentioned that you had the opportunity to work with educators in so many different regions, what are overlapping reasons that you've seen in your own work, both as a school leader, as a coach, as a mentor, for people just leaving the work, right? Like we talk so
Mm-hmm.
much about retention and wanting to keep people,
Mm-hmm.
and all of these efforts, I put quotes in the air, are made to like really pursue that, but then in talent we see this mass exodus of people every single school year. And so in your experiences, what have been some of the reasons that you've seen people leave, and like how have you been able to potentially talk people through those transitions to even keep them to keep them, or have them stay?
That's such a good question. Such a good question. The $1,000,000 question, really, right? If we could figure out the answer to all of that, I see a lot of reasons, and the thing that probably I relate the most to is that connection to well-being and health, right? I've struggled with my mental health over the course of my really my life, but when I look back, it came full force in my 20s. And so I think that the second our educators stop taking care of themselves, a lot of other things will spiral. And so that I think is one thing of just the work is hard. So if you're not leaving space to take care of your mind, body, spirit, it's going to be very hard to go into work every single day and be successful. But it's also, there's so many other layers. I can't even imagine being an educator right now when it comes to teaching during the pandemic. I look at the people we work with and I just like feel so blessed that we get to work with the people we do. Um, but when you look at the overall system, right? Like when we get real down to it, the United States didn't create an education system that was supposed to help Black and brown kids thrive. And our teachers work in that environment every day. Our kids are in that environment every single day. And it just becomes really hard. And for whatever reason, whether it's politics or money or personal reasons, the system is broken in many ways. And I think that's part of the reason it's hard for a lot of educators to stay, even the ones who, some of our best teachers, it gets really hard.
And so you mentioned that like the mental health. Well, first, definitely shout out mental health awareness. Mind Your Mentals podcast. That's why we created the podcast in the first place. What up, Tim? Because we really wanted to proactively address a lot of these things. If you don't mind, though, talk to us a little bit about like your own experience in your 20s. Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of folks can relate, right? Like that college age, the pressure of having to do well in school, but also simultaneously having to figure out like the next version of your life as a professional. So much stress and pressure is put on the end of high school and all the way through college. And so, yeah, if you don't mind just walking us a little bit through
No.
those struggles. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, at first I was so ashamed to talk about these things. And now I will talk about it to anybody who'll listen. Cause I think if I knew another person that was going along the same path, I think mental health people talk about it a lot more now. But even just 10 years ago, it wasn't as much of a thing. And so when I look back, I think I was always wound real tight, right? Like I was a kiddo who needed to be perfect. I was a gymnast, I was a dancer, I was a class treasurer. Like I did all of the things, I did all the homework, I was in AP classes, and I was just stressed out all the time. And my internal dialogue was wretched. Um, I was never good enough, never pretty enough, never skinny enough, never smart enough. And that tape just played constantly. And I, you know, I kind of just kept my head down and was like, I'll just keep working and working and working and striving for perfection. And eventually there was just the crack in the foundation just imploded. The impetus of that was a breakup, and by no means I've gotten to the point like it wasn't his fault, but like the foundation was bound to break at some point, and that was the catalyst of me actually taking a look in the mirror and saying like, oh, I am anxious, and I was also in a terrible depression. And I had a really severe eating disorder throughout my 20s. So, all of the methods I was using to cope weren't working. And I cried my way to a therapist. I battled back and forth about meds or no meds. And I understand people who go through that struggle too. And now I'm at a point, like I've been going to therapy for years now. I know I love my therapist. I was diagnosed with that anxiety and depression. I personally have made the choice, like I am on meds for both of those things and they help significantly. I know that's not the choice for everybody, but I was also trying I also do the meditation. I at least attempt. That's really still very hard for me to silence my brain. I don't know about you. The working out, I try to eat right. And I think I see when I am not doing those things, the voices start coming back into my brain. And the other thing I did that has been a real help is I actually stopped drinking altogether. I was pretty social, like it made me comfortable, and a lot of the voices in my head and all of those negative thoughts would melt away a little bit. And it's really silly to give a depressed person a depressant. So once I put those two things together, that's also been a huge help to just not add that depressant to my life. And so those are all the pieces to the puzzle that have come together. And now that I can see warning signs earlier, I know when I have to take an assessment and look, okay, do I need to reset boundaries? Am I working out? Am I drinking enough water? All those things. It's not always the place to start, but at least I can see where things start to get shaky, if I'm getting too stressed out or I'm not doing things that I should be doing.
Hey everybody, so I have some really exciting news. The Third Lab podcast is actually expanding, and so I'm in the process of putting together a co-author book called The Third Lab: Transformational Stories of Life Experiences That Make Us Better. And this is a great opportunity for anyone that's looking to get published for the first time, or if you've been published before, this is a great opportunity to, well, not have to write a whole book yourself. And so if you're interested in learning more about the product, the program, the opportunity, feel free to reach out to me at maldavis21@gmail.com, or feel free to reach out to me through the socials for the Third Lab. Really excited about this program, really excited about this opportunity, and really excited for you all to come and join me. So again, if you have any questions, want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Each one, teach one. We all learn together. Peace. Yeah, I appreciate that transparency, and as somebody that like literally still to this day, I'm working on reversing the negative way that I talk to myself, right? Like,
Mhm.
I realized that I was motivating myself by fear of failure and not by the allure
Mhm.
of success. And like those are very different
Mm.
things, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you fear that you're always failing or not doing well, like that pressure is it's incredible. And it is
Mhm.
manifests itself in my personal life very negatively. And then I can relate, like I was clinically diagnosed with depression at 15, been on and off
Mhm.
meds like since then. Haven't been on them for about 10ish, 12ish years now. Just
Yeah.
because I felt that like for me, it just took too much away from like my ability to emote. But to your point,
Mhm.
if you need the meds, if that's what's going to get you the help that you
Mhm.
need, do that, right? Because
Yeah.
so many times we supplement that with, like you said, alcohol, or for me it was marijuana. And it gets to a point where now you're an addict and depressed, right? Like,
Right.
what I mean? Like
Terrible
right.
combination.
Like you've now compounded these issues. And my dad and
Mhm.
I in his episode talk a lot about just addiction and his process getting over
Mm.
addiction. And he's been a huge help to me. But there's so much, and you said it, we talk more about this now, but like these conversations 10, 20 years ago, like the shrouded in secrecy, we never spoke about these things, right? Because we were
Yeah.
afraid of how people would view us. And so, Philo, I really appreciate you just being honest, because I guarantee somebody's going to hear this and maybe in the exact same situation and like will be able to get ahead of it versus having to go through
Mhm.
and learn it themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
that's the hope.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. That's why this exists, is that somebody's going to hear this and it's going to help them get on their pathway. And so you mentioned all of the work that you've done in education, which has been quite a lot. Like you've seen a lot of things, you've experienced a lot of things, but most of your time has been spent in elementary school. And so for you, why was that sort of like the money area where you felt it was necessary to concentrate your efforts?
I love the babies. Well, first it was the like luck of the draw. So, like I said, I was psych and soc, which gave me my transcripts enough of a variety that I could be certified in the state of Maryland for elementary ed. So that's like that's how it first started. And I ended up in this small room in Baltimore, and that's just where I, if we could get it right and get kids really on a strong path in the beginning of their educational journey, I just think it makes a world of difference. Yes, there are challenges that happen in middle school and high school, but for some reason, for me, I just feel this like complete draw to to be with kids and at a young age. And I feel as though when I was at the elementary school here in KIPP Philly, watching kids learn how to read is one of the most incredible things when you really think about it. A lot of us don't remember how we learned how to read. It just was something that eventually came to us. And as a teacher, watching kids figure it out, and then better yet, watching kids get obsessed with reading is incredible. So that's part of the reason why. Um, and I started my school when I think of the vision for KWPEA. It's really based on that tape that I talked about. If I can have even the smallest influence in helping young kids create the positive tape in their brain, I feel like I've done something right. because like you said, it takes a lot longer to erase that tape and tape over it than it is to just have a solid start. So it's actually a story I've told when I talk about founding the school. And I just adore the age group and watching parents. The first day of kindergarten is always my favorite day of school, especially when I was a principal, because I was watching parents trust us with their pride and joy. Like their biggest gift is always, I think, trusting a school with their loved one, their baby. And it's not always easy. There are a lot of tears for the first day of kindergarten for all my kindergarten teachers. Shout out, you know who you are. But yeah, that's part of it too. It's just to see kids at the start of their journey. To think the kids that I taught in first grade are now going to be freshmen next year here is just insane. And I want to be here when they're crossing the stage. And I see some of our teachers, even from high school, I get so jealous that they're already at the stage where they get to see kids walk across college stages or go into whatever work they want to do. But I like to be there right at the beginning.
Yeah, and that's so powerful. And definitely shout outs to the kindergarten teachers. I've realized very early in my education career, I was way too tall to be in kindergarten. I'm also not I'm not a thespian, I'm not an actor. You got to be on for those little ones. But to
Yeah.
your point, I remember sitting in when I was at Uncommon Schools, and it was like during breakfast, the kindergartners were counting to 100 by fives in unison. And I remember sitting there and I was like, could I do this in kindergarten? Like I really had to sit
Yeah.
and be like, were we on this level when we were this age? And so yeah, I mean, setting that, I'm a big middle school person because I feel like middle school is really a lot of times our last opportunity to build that intellectual curiosity in students before they
Mm,
transition to high school, where the
mhm,
expectation is you already know it, right? Like as an eighth grade
mhm,
ELA teacher, I had kids on third grade reading levels. And so
mhm,
I know that that's not sustainable when you get to high
mhm.
school, right? Like that's why we see
Yeah.
huge dropout rates because we lost them super early, right? Like by third
Mhm.
grade, already determining prison beds and building new
Yep.
prisons. And so, yeah, elementary school is definitely the money area. And then for me, middle school is like, man, let's get them invested. Let's, like you said, let's redo this tape that they hear in their heads so that they
Yeah.
really big themselves up. Because, you know, that's so important. Yet we hear very few people talk about that, right? We
Yeah.
not a lot of conversations about redoing
Mhm.
that tape for our kids and for ourselves too. And so, Philo, we talk a lot about you as a leader, and I like to joke and ask you when we have openings come up if you transitioning back into the classroom, and you very transparently tell me that's not for you. And so let's talk a little bit about your time as a leader. You founded our elementary school, Baby West,
Mhm.
and you played a very significant role in setting its foundation before handing it over. And so talk to us about like that transition. There are so many teachers. As a recruiter, what I hear so often is I want to teach for 2 or 3 years and then become a principal. And then I'm like, even in the charter
Aw.
world, like that's, yeah, right. Like, oh, that's adorable. You might have to go a little longer than
Yeah.
that. Right, exactly. But yeah, talk to us about your transition. Like, what did that look like? And then ultimately, why did you decide to make that move into becoming a school leader?
Yeah. All amazing questions. The moment I realized I wanted to start a school, I was actually sitting in an info session at the school I was working at, which was the KIPP school, KPEA. And I was just doing the math, right? The cafeteria was packed with parents that wanted their kids to be kindergartners in that building. And we only had one elementary school at the time. And I was doing this fellowship that was priming me for leadership with KIPP. And I just looked around, and as I was doing the math, I was like, if not me, then like, not that other people aren't doing it, but like, why not me, right? I don't want to say if not me, then who, because that feels really not. I'm not trying to sound that air, right? It wasn't the air of arrogance, but like our families deserve more opportunities, and mathematically, most of them in this cafeteria space are not going to get the slot they want in this building. And that's when I joined a fellowship called the Fisher Fellowship, where I spent a year traveling the country and just learning how other leaders led their schools. I got to hang out in a bunch of different cities and learn from a lot of amazing leaders. And that's where the vision for KWPEA came from. But it really all started with that cafeteria moment of our families deserve all of the choices. So let's give them more. And being a principal by far was the hardest job I've ever done in my life. Point blank, period. I managed adults for 7 years before I went back into the classroom. And that helped me a lot thinking about, okay, how do our newest teachers learn? How do you coach somebody else to coach a new teacher? So that combination is perfectly aligned to, okay, how do I manage APs? How do those APs coach our teachers and make our teachers better so that our kids can shine? And you mentioned in my intro, like I also work as a health and wellness coach in some capacities, and that I do that on the side too, because I love seeing people do what they're supposed to do and be who they're meant to be, and watching a teacher teach who is just magical is, I think, the greatest gift that we as leaders get to see. Like I have a certain subset of classrooms that on my worst days as a principal, I would sit in their room because it put a smile on my face and I remember why they're there, and you see kids moving and learning. So yeah, I think that's the combination of my story, and my why is the vision for the school, but it all started because I just knew our kids needed more opportunities.
And so I feel like that really transitions well into what you're currently doing as the Senior Director of Teacher and Leader Pathways, because you had a chance to walk through those pathways yourself. And then now are responsible for turning around and really designing from scratch, right? Like, what we're certainly doing, certain components of it already existed, other pieces, you've added on
Mhm.
yourself. And so, yeah, just talk to us. I do want to get into the wellness coaching too in a moment, but talk to us about your current role. We've talked about it from like a sort of higher arcing level, but really like break it down to us. Why is it so important that organizations, school districts, CMOs have these
Mhm.
very legit teacher and leader pathways? Like, what's the importance of that work?
I love this job, right? Like I'm the first person in our region that has had this role. It didn't exist before, and I'm really proud to be doing it. I see it as the pipelines and the pathways that I create or just solidify, because like you said, a number of these programs have already existed. Um, it allows people to level up, right? Like, so if you are an aspiring teacher, but you've never had an ed background, our Liberty Teaching Fellowship is a great way for you to step into a classroom in a um, formal environment where you're getting on the ground learning while also your own development and growth. So that, I think, though, that bridge between aspiring and then lead teaching, people need a lot of support and coaching to be able to do that, both in knowledge, their skill, and the mindsets it takes. And I see that across all of those jumping points, right? So if you're a lead teacher and you want to get experience or expand your impact with your grade level team, there's something for emerging leaders. So the series that I do with leadership development with our emerging leaders, where we do workshops at night on those basic leadership levels. It's just, I think everybody wants to. I have not met a person that doesn't want to be better, do better, learn more, and grow in this work. So the pathways are just clarifying what that can look like for someone, whether that's the Liberty Teaching Fellowship, emerging leaders, all the way up to the principal and residence program. I think so often in education, we throw people in the deep end and it's sink or swim. So why not actually create supports and structures that can make people learn and grow into the roles that they're interested in? I also think it's important for these pathways in case someone isn't interested, right? Like if you are thinking about being a teacher coach and you do the teaching coaching modules with me and you watch you watch 3 teaching videos and you decide you hate watching other people teach, well, then stay in the classroom, right? And you do that work. Sometimes the idea of being a school leader or an assistant principal can sound super sexy and people think they want to do that, but I'd much rather you be in the classroom and be happy than trying to force yourself to be a position that actually doesn't suit your skill set or doesn't drive you. So the pathways also give people, I think, an opportunity to really test out whether or not their next step is the right next step for them.
Yeah, I love that piece around what you just said towards the tail end of like figuring out if that next step makes sense. School leadership is super sexy to everybody. Everybody, for the most part, wants to be a school leader or have some like, you know, piece of them that aspires to that, because that's sort of what we're told is like as a teacher you become a teacher leader, then you become an AP, then you become a principal, then
Mm-hmm.
stay principal or head of schools or work in the district or
Right,
whatever it
yeah.
may be. And so there's this very clear like step up ladder, but there are so many folks that I've met like yourself that were like, okay, I made it to the top of the ladder and this is not where I want to be. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's so important that there are options for people that want to make that move, and there are options for people that just want to figure it out, because
Mhm.
the more information you have, the better positioned you are to make the right choice for sure. And
Yeah.
so Philo, I wouldn't be doing you service though if we didn't talk about your wellness coaching and that component of your work, because that you're a hell of a educator, but like I see how much passion that you put into that work. And I know how much joy you get from seeing people, like you said, like actualize the best version of themselves. And so what led you to that work ultimately? And then what is it that you actually do from a day-to-day standpoint?
The work I'm going to talk mostly about is with this organization called Stratejoy. During that low point in my 20s, at some point, I Googled quarter life crisis to just see what popped up. And sure enough, there was this woman named Molly Mahar who popped up, and she had a website of um, it was I feel like life coaching is also something that people talk about a lot. You can Google that, and there everybody seems to be becoming a life coach, but she was doing that way before other people were. And she just had this program that she sent in a manila folder. She was writing out on her own, and it was just reflection questions to help figure out, like, what are your personal values, what makes you happy, and how to kind of create a more joyful life. And so I started to do her programs and eventually just became, I joke with Molly all the time, like, I'm a Stratejoy lifer. I did her mastermind group called Elevate in 2013. She did a summer camp for women. We're talking like adult women at a summer camp where we did silly games. And we also spent a lot of time just reflecting on key topics. And Elevate and some of the stuff she did at summer camp became her biggest program now, called Reclamation. And what Reclamation is a 10-month course that she has a teaching call, guest calls, books that she recommends on specific topics. And what I do is I take a subset of less than 10 women and I go through the course with them, um, on a smaller group. So you can either choose to do the whole group or also opt into a small group. And I'm a small group leader. So I'm an upgrade with the program. So those folks, I talk to them. We have monthly calls, and the topics run from, we start with authenticity. I think you live your life very authentically, and that's the right, like, that's the heart of everything. If you are not able to sit authentically with yourself, none of the other stuff really is going to be able to come together in pieces. So we work on authenticity and expectations, body love, pleasure month, abundance. I know I'm thinking, oh, creativity is a month that we do. So we go through all of these different months with these overarching themes. And I run the small group calls. I am available for my mentees as someone who talks them through the content on one-on-one basis. So if somebody's having a really hard month with body love, they will do a call a coach and they'll call me and we'll talk through whatever's going on with them. I'm just basically a listening ear. I tell them I'm not a certified life coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm somebody who just went through all the same programs and I've been through some similar things. And um, people, if they have somebody else who's like a third party that doesn't know them too well, they're able to really figure out their own problems themselves. They just need a sounding board of somebody who doesn't have any stake in the game. And so that's kind of what I do for them. And the other thing I've done on the side is I actually, I have worked with Beachbody. I do that a lot less now because diet culture is something that I'm really trying to break my own mind free of. So I was finding myself falling into some of those patterns, but I have a great group of women that I run a small group online, and people are just working out on their own and posting their selfies and really proud of themselves when they can finally run that 5K. They set a goal. But yeah, that's the other component of things that I do is I help run these groups because, like I said, mind, body, spirit is so important. And those two different avenues have really helped me myself. And so I just want to help others through that too.
And that's awesome. I think so important too is that like when we learn things, it's imperative for us to turn around and teach them to other people, right? Like Maya Angelou said, the purpose of education is to liberate others. The tagline for this show is each one teach one, we all learn together. Like that communal learning is imperative to our growth and success. And so I love that, you know, from your own individual struggles that you realize the importance of being able to share your message with the community that then ultimately motivates people to be great, right? Like, again, that's why this podcast exists, is like, I want this to be motivation for greatness. I don't want you to think that you went through something that no one else has been through. Like, nah, it's all these episodes. Somebody has been through this, right? You know, like Hatcher's, my boy, said early on, like none of us are island, right? You know, our shared experiences are imperative. And so, Feilow, I really appreciate you because you really have taken the time. You could be doing anything, right? But you realize that investing in people is super important. And like that's why we resonated pretty early on, because, you know, you said I'm authentic, but you're super authentic too, right? Like, you know, I've come to you and ask very straightforward questions and appreciate the fact that you give me straightforward answers because I know the truth. But sometimes you got to ask just to make sure. So, you know, you've been super, super helpful and super supportive of me. Again, I know that you just do that with pretty much everybody. Isaiah constantly sings your praises. And you know, that's what up, Isaiah? Hey, so I'm really excited to announce the first ever advertiser for the Third Lab podcast. And of course, it's the homie Teddy Gandy and his team from Blacks Apparel. Blacks is a clothing company that focuses on Black reality, both past and present. They share daily Blacks or Black facts, quotes, and content regarding Black reality through their social media. So stop by the store at blacks.com. That's BLACTS.com to check out the Blacks basic tees and all of their inventory. Blacks also uses its platform to collaborate with local artists, so keep an eye out for their limited edition tees and apparel. Make sure to use the promo code THIRDLAP for 10% off your first purchase. I mean, really, what you waiting for? Get the blacks.com, Third Lap, for 10% off your first purchase. Support the homie Teddy, support the podcast. Let's go. So appreciate you walking us through your professional and sort of personal history. At this point, though, I would love to hear more about like your why. So you mentioned it a little bit, but what is your motivation? Like, what keeps you pushing in those really tough days where you're potentially struggling with the diet component, anxiety and depression are sort of peaking for you, but like you stay locked in? Why is that? What keeps you just motivated to go forward?
Personally, professionally, or both?
I would say both.
Both. I find it a lot easier, I think, on the professional level sometimes because I think of any of my students, right, that I've connected with. The names Taylor and Asaya come up to me the quickest because they deserve me at 100. Working with their leaders at this point, or working with the teachers that teach someone like Asaya or teach someone like Taylor. And so on the crappiest days, it is the students, and also, like I said, those magical teachers that we work with. It's hard to watch any of those magical teachers right now, but I cannot wait till the buildings open up and I can just sit in certain teachers' rooms and just watch kids light up and learn from them. So those are the things just, I think, professionally ground me. And then personally, I think the best way I went to Soul Cycle yesterday morning. So shout out to Lauren, my Soul Cycle instructor. And she brought up this good point. Like right now, we're all undefeated. If we're up and walking, you know, in the literal or figurative sense, like we have been undefeated on all of our hardest days because we've gotten up again. And so on my darkest days, I think it's just remembering like I've been through some hard stuff. And so take a moment. I have to sometimes make the decision, is this a sulking day and I just want to be a hermit and maybe lay in bed a little bit longer than I should? But I also know those warning signs now. And if I'm doing that too many days in a row, it probably it means I need somebody, something, and a community somewhere to make me feel better. And so, yeah, I want to help other people be better and make other people feel like seen, cared for, and that they can be their best selves. And so that's, I think, also what gets me out of bed every single day. It was really hard, I will say, with the pandemic, right? Because I live alone. I was staring at my walls for a good chunk of the day. And I was very insular because I wanted to keep my family safe. So I was only driving to Jersey to see my immediate family on the weekends. And so I miss the people, right? And being connected to some of those folks that I just know and love. And I get to watch be great all the time. And so, yeah, that's just part of, I think, me as a person is just like, how can I make someone feel seen today? And part of that is knowing where I am mentally and if I need to make some changes for the day.
Yeah, that the warning signs are so important. And
Yep.
like, you know, now that and shout outs to my therapist Omar, who continues to help me like work through this stuff. But I've gotten to the point where I even alert like my wife and other people that I work with and love that,
Yep.
like, yo, if you see this or if you hear this, like,
Yep.
be like,
Yep.
yo, Mal, you depressed, what's up with you? Right? Like, address it
Right.
head on, because it got to the
Yeah.
point where like I don't even know sometimes. I know one of my
Mhm.
key things is when I start playing Madden for like 10 hours a day, then something's going on, right? So I told my wife,
Yeah.
I was like, listen, if you catch me ODing, like I like Madden, but I don't like it that much.
I
So I'm
don't
trying
like
to
10 hours
run
much.
exactly, like I'm trying to run away from something. So, you know, holla at me and see if I'm okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
those signs are so important.
I do the same thing. I didn't talk as much about my eating disorder, but that is just that's a constant fight. And I probably didn't talk about it as much because it is a constant fight still. I'm not as like, I don't feel like I have as much of a hold on it, but I have certain friends that I said, if you start seeing me do some funky things with food, tell me, because to your point, like I will make up some idea that, oh, I'm just like clean eating. And that's what I'm doing. No, you're not. You're just taking out all like eat the bread, eat the things, right? And so I have a small subset of friends that I do tell them. And especially with COVID, that's part of the reason I stepped away with um Beachbody. I still do it. I love the exercise. I love the workouts. But when I'm by myself in this apartment alone, my body dysmorphia goes bananas. And if I let myself start portions or whatever, I probably would have went bananas with it and gotten really sick again. So I just kind of kept that to a bare minimum this time around because that's, yeah, not a good place when I go down that route.
Yeah, not at all. And the diet and stuff is so tricky, right? Because there are so
Mm-hmm.
many diets and so many fads, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's telling you that you're supposed to. Instagram does us no favors, right? Like, you know,
None.
this perfection that we're all chasing that just isn't real. And like the crazy part is, we know it's not real, right? Like
Right.
we
Right.
know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's not real. Yet still,
Yeah.
we spend so much of our time pursuing this thing that even if we like achieved it, we wouldn't be happy, right? Like even if you
Oh,
had
and
the
I
perfect body.
wasn't.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
hit
Yeah.
I hit a number and went far past that number that I thought, oh, once I hit this number, I'm gonna be golden. And I was a shell, literally a shell of myself, because 98% of my thinking was, how am I going to avoid going out to eat with my friends because I don't want to take in those calories, or how, like, what can I have on this menu that isn't going to whatever, just my mind was all the time. Yeah, and it did nothing. If anything, I just became worse and more sick because I was chasing this thing. Being a dancer and a gymnast was probably not helpful for me. It was basically the worst combination, but I didn't know that at the time. Yeah, to your point, it didn't didn't matter in the end.
And it's crazy because like I had no idea, and I should have, in a patriarchal society, like the pressure that women are put under to maintain this, I mean, unhealthy image, to be quite honest. Like,
For sure.
when you're
For sure.
frail, like that means you're not getting the
Mm.
nutrients and the things, like you exercise, but
Yeah.
like you're not in a good physical place. And just
Yeah.
connecting with like, former models and folks that play, sports, gymnastics, stuff like that, and just hearing about that. I've heard cheerleading. I've heard this
Mhm.
same story from women so many times. And it's just, I'm glad that so many of them that I've spoken to have gotten to where you are. But so many of them haven't, right? Like so many of them,
Mhm.
that becomes a manifestation of their adulthood. They now teach their
Mhm.
daughters that same thing. And it's just a fucked up cycle, man.
It's
And
terrible.
yeah,
It's
and
terrible.
and that's why I so appreciate your transparency right now, especially around what you just said, which is like this is still an ongoing process, right? But like
Yeah.
that's the purpose of us having this conversation today. I don't want anybody that's a finished product because come
That's
on,
not
like
they
that's not real.
yeah.
Exactly, right? And so all of this is an ongoing process as we continue to evolve as human beings in this environment that we're in. And so, as always, Philo, I just appreciate you being a real one. You
Same.
always just are so honest and truthful, even when it hurts. And like to me, sometimes like that's the key. We just got to live in that pain sometimes and
Yeah.
stretch ourselves further. And so, we're continuing here on a third lap. We're running the lap almost to the end. And so we're now at the motivational thoughts for the people. And so this is your area just to stamp the knowledge. What do you want people to walk away with, understanding about you and your message?
Yeah. Uh Mental health matters, right? So break the stigma, share your story because vulnerability is such a strength. Because when you're vulnerable, you're going to be able to connect with other people. So stamping mental health matters, connect, connect. And you can connect through the vulnerability. And I just want everyone to know that they're perfectly made, right? And you're here for a reason. And so it's hard to remember that sometimes. So don't forget that. Anybody's listening that needed to hear that today, I hope at the very least you're like, I am perfectly made. Somebody's driving in their car. Damn right I am. And I hope that makes somebody's day a little bit brighter because it's hard for me to remember that sometimes. So those are probably my big three.
Yeah, I love that. You are perfectly made. Man, that, like, to me, that's the key to life, right? Is that self-acceptance. And like when you
Mhm.
stop trying to be something that you aren't and accept who you are, right? And like not saying that you accept it and don't continue to work. Of course you continue to work,
Right.
but like loving yourself is the only way that you'll ever accomplish anything that you really care about in life.
Yeah.
Because especially through this pandemic, I mean, much to your point,
Yeah.
there have been a lot of people that were literally by themselves. And so, I mean, even here with my wife, like I spent so much time being introspective over this past year and some change because there's nothing else to do. It's like
No,
nowhere else to
no.
go.
I can only
So
watch the MCU, but so many times.
exactly. And so, you're forced to really come to terms with a lot of the things that are wrong in your life or that need adjustment. And one of my OGs, shout outs to Sadiq, he told me, Sadiq, years ago, was like he asked me, could I look myself in the mirror and tell myself, like, I love myself, like, I love you. And this was
Mm-hmm.
back in college. So I was like maybe 23 or 24. And I couldn't, like,
Mm-hmm.
I tried it a couple times and looked away every single time. And
Mm,
I realized that I had come to a good moment in my own adulthood when I could do that and still can do that to this day, right? Like there are
that's
certain
awesome.
pieces like, all right, yeah, I love you, but you can still work. But like
Yeah.
that disconnect or that aversion of the eyes is no longer a thing. And so folks that are
Mm-hmm.
listening to this, love yourself, like Diana said, man, just you are perfectly made the way you are. um Believe in yourself. You can do whatever you want to do, but
Right.
if you don't believe it, it ain't gonna happen, man. Never, not one
Mm-mm.
time. And so Philo, where can people, oh, sorry. So Third Lap book club list, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
And so the book club list, so any books that you suggest people check out, but then also, as I've expanded over the past several episodes, just multimedia, media stuff.
Yeah.
What are things that music, anything that you want to share with the folks?
Yeah, I so some of the books I just finished Eloquent Rage, which was very good. I think it's Dr. Brittany Cooper. I just read for Body Love Month, My Body's Not an Apology. That was a really excellent book as well. And I really resonated. Anybody who knows me, I'm a big Brene fan. So if anybody is at the start of this journey in terms of thinking about how do I change my mindset towards myself, go with Brene Brown's books. Daring Greatly is my favorite and a pretty good place to start if you want to just taste of the Brene Brown work. So those are the serious books. And then if you want to go into Harry Potter land, I'll talk about Harry Potter all day. So
I knew that was coming. As soon as you said
book
that
four
serious
is the
land,
best. Book four is the best book. So
and I was like, here comes Harry
yeah.
Potter.
But yeah, also with work, I mean, we just read James Baldwin. And we also, what are some of the other ones that I really like? I'm looking over here. Oh, the Bettina Love book that we all read over the summer too, I think is really excellent for both of those. I think are really excellent for educators.
The Bettina Love, was that the liberatory education book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More Than Survive, I think.
Yeah. That I've heard nothing but great things about that one.
Oh, so good.
And then we can't leave here without mentioning that Philo might be the biggest Ludacris fan that there is. So, anything, I'm sure she'll suggest any Luda. Do you have a favorite Luda album?
I can't believe you dropped the Christopher Bridges.
See, she said the man's government name. That's how you know she's a real fan.
I do know his
She knew the
official.
man
Yeah, I
government
follow his
name.
wife. She's pregnant again. She's gorgeous. Oh, Luda. I mean, I don't think there's a Ludacris song I don't love. So that's the good. I didn't tell you this, but my niece, she's 2.5, for those of you who don't know, which is hopefully a lot of you listening. And she just requested Gasolina because I was listening to Gasolina by Daddy Yankee. I was like, my work here is done. Like, thank you. Yeah. She'll get to Luda when she's a little bit older.
Yeah,
it's a little too early for her. But oh yeah, you mentioned other things. Yeah, I'm a big binge watcher. So if I'm having a rough, like if I just want to disappear, I love like the fantasy. So give me a Captain Marvel, give me a Captain America. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was just really good. That one's pretty intense actually, because it also does a lot of reflection about race in America currently. So it's this combination of a little bit too real for me at the time. But yeah, WandaVision was great. So less inspirational, but more just let your mind go.
I mean, letting your mind go is so important sometimes too. We stay locked in like all day, every day, spending all day on Zoom. And so sometimes you just need to let your mind wander.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to stare at Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie on screen. And it's delicious and
Mackie
delightful.
is my man, yo. Anything he's in, I'm gonna check it out. Yeah, he's an amazing actor for sure. And so Philo, where can people find you on social media if they want to interact with you to learn more about any of the work that you're doing, both personally or professionally?
Yeah, there aren't many Diana Filos in the world, I found. So Instagram's probably the easiest place. So Diana.Filo, Filo. And then if you want to find me on LinkedIn, same thing. So just Diana Filo. And I think I'm the only one. So those are the main two. You really want to stalk me on Facebook, same, just Diana Filo, but there's not much going on there.
Yeah, I follow Philo on Instagram. I follow on all the socials. Always positive posts, which I love, and motivational stuff, and also you chopping it up, which I love too, because we can't always be motivated. We have to pour into ourselves, right? Like we pour so much into others, but finding that time to chill, relax, and just hang out is so important, so important. So I enjoy seeing that the mix and amalgamation of all of those things from your social media. So definitely follow Philo. Yeah, you're the only Philo I know. So it was pretty easy to find you.
Not many.
Not at all. And then Feilow is an acronym too, because when you type it into
It
your
is.
phone, and so what does it stand for again?
First in, last out, baby.
That, yes. And so, which is hilarious because I kept typing it into my phone to text you, and
Why does
it
it
would capitalize
capitalize?
it. Yeah. And I'm like, and you was like, yeah, that's what it means. I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
also speaks to your work ethic too. So that's hey,
And my Penn
listen.
State days. Hey.
Yeah. And you
So,
mentioned Rutgers. So listen, I wanna take a moment here to talk about this. Rutgers almost beat Penn State last year. So we're gonna have to be careful. We're gonna have to be careful about talking about Rutgers like
you
this.
know, I did not. I said nothing against Rutgers, but
Right,
almost
right.
only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, sir. So
You're
thank you
right.
very
You're
much. Oh my
you're
gosh.
right. You're right. You're right.
Oh, I need to get to a game so bad.
Yeah, I'm
So
excited
badly.
that, hopefully we'll be able to start attending some of this stuff again in person.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as I make jokes about Penn State, that's one of the few places that like packed out is just an intimidating atmosphere for visiting teams.
Yeah.
So looking forward
Bananas.
to that
Yeah.
for sure. And I hope you can get to a couple games this year. And so Philo, we ran the third lap. We did it. We made it to the
Right.
end. I appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody for listening. Any last words that you want to share with people before we log out?
just just thank you for the work you're doing. I'm sure you're changing more lives than you know. And I'm really lucky to get to see you tomorrow morning in a team meeting. But I feel really blessed that I get to work with you every day. So I hope you know that too. So thanks to everybody who's listening to Mal.
Appreciate you. Yeah, I hope people are listening. People tell me they are.
They
I
are.
don't
They
ask
are.
like follow-up questions or check for understandings at all. So, hey, if you listening, I appreciate you as always. And Philo, again, the feeling is mutual. From the first moment I've interacted with you to this day, you've been nothing but genuine. So I appreciate you just being who you are. And look forward to us continuing to develop our relationship over time. And so, this is another episode of the Third Lap Podcast. This is your host, Mal Davis, signing out. Each one, teach one, we all learn together. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Third Lap Podcast. This is your host, Mal Davis. Please visit thethirdlappodcast.com for more information about the podcast, about our guests, and also to see our reading list. You can find us at The Third Lap Podcast on LinkedIn and Facebook, at Third Lap on Twitter, and at third_lap_podcast on Instagram. If you know anyone that would be great to be featured on this show, please reach out to our host, Mal Davis. He's always looking for interesting people to learn more about them and to talk about their pathway. Thank you so much again. Have a good one.